Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to GX, and this is why 3 US Navy carriers winning against Iran is a warning sign. This is like saying why getting shot with cannon is a warning sign. Yeah, it should have been a warning sign from the start. Yeah, it's a 3 US super carriers, as they are called, because it's really big, a lot of planes in it, not to mention accompanying many destroyers, frigates, and all that. Yeah. So, did that made it? Did Bush made it, or is it still on way? Because it takes a long time, right? Ford is basically going back now because stretched too thin already. That's insane. So now it's like 3 carriers are there. Wait a minute. Alongside Ford is 3 carrier, right? So Ford is gonna stay there. That's interesting. Triple is there as well, which is like a mini carrier in itself. So there's more than 3 carrier in a way, because Tripoli might as well be a carrier the way it's made, right? Let's do this one. This is my channel, Navy Decoded, obviously. Check that out if you haven't seen it. There's a link in the description. Yeah, let's watch it.
Through Bab el-Mandeb, you risk losing a $10 billion asset before the war even begins. The strait is narrow, the threat is real, and a supercarrier is not a ship you gamble. So the Pentagon chose to go around an entire continent instead, more than 10,000 miles, millions in fuel, weeks of delay. The USS George H.W. Bush, CVN-77, sailed south from Norfolk, rounded the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa, and crossed the Indian Ocean to arrive in the U.S. Central Command area of operations. When it arrived, it completed a combat formation the United States hadn't used in over 20 years. 3 carrier strike groups, 3 axes, every maritime approach to Iran sealed off. The Gerald R. Ford holding the west from the Red Sea, the Abraham Lincoln controlling the south from the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Oman, choking the Strait of Hormuz. And now, the Bush establishing a third axis from the southeast, operating deep in the Indian Ocean. But the math waiting for CVN-77 at the end of that journey was uglier than the detour. If you think 3 carriers means the US has solved its weapons problem in the Middle East, stay with us, because what's actually happening is the opposite. Let's break it down. This is Navy Decoded, and there's a 16-mile stretch of water between here and there that changes everything. The shortest route from Norfolk to the Red Sea goes through the Mediterranean and down the Suez Canal. That's roughly 6,000 miles. The Bush didn't take it. Because at the bottom of that route sits Bab el-Mandeb, a strait barely 16 miles wide at its narrowest point. On one side, Djibouti. On the other, Yemen. And from the Yemeni coastline, Houthi forces have been launching
It's basically Houthis. I was about to say that. Like, yeah, it is a complicated topic, but at the same time not, because you can say it in just one word. Houthis. There you go. And everybody knows already, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Ballistic missiles with ranges exceeding 240 nautical miles. Cruise missiles reaching over 430 nautical miles. Explosive drone boats and one-way attack drones, all aimed at anything large enough to track on radar. A supercarrier is the largest thing on the ocean. 16 miles of water gives you almost no room to maneuver, almost no time to react. Pushing a $10 billion ship through that choke point would be the most expensive gamble in naval history. Make no mistake, CVN-77 and its escort ships could fight their way through Bab el-Mandeb. The strike group has the firepower to suppress Houthi launch sites and intercept incoming threats simultaneously. This wasn't about fear, it was about math. Every SM-6 fired to defend the transit is one fewer SM-6 available for the actual mission. Every sailor put at risk in a choke point engagement is a sailor who wasn't sent here to fight Yemen. The Bush was coming for Iran, burning through interceptors and exposing the crew to a gauntlet that serves no strategic purpose. That's not caution, that's waste. So CVN-77 went the other way, south from Norfolk, around the entire continent of Africa, past the Cape of Good Hope, through the Mozambique Channel, up into the Indian Ocean. 11,500 miles, 23 days at sea, at a strike group operating cost of $6 to $8 million.
This is a 2D map, obviously, but you can't probably see it. But in a globe, yeah, the America would be far up north, so it would look like somewhat like close to this direction, right? And this is kind of warped in a way, I think. But this is larger distance than you would think, because it kind of splits apart in a globe, right? So the USA kind of goes on top. It comes from here, and this is a longer distance. So it's really long than you would think. If you see this, like, yeah, you come from here rather than you came from here, slightly longer. No, it's not slightly longer. It's much longer than that.
Dollars per day, the detour alone cost somewhere between $140 million and $185 million before the Bush fired a single weapon. That's the price tag of avoiding a 16-mile strait.
Yeah.
That's how dangerous Bab el-Mandeb has become. And while the Bush was spending 3 weeks in transit, the two carriers already on station were not in perfect shape. The Gerald R. Ford had stepped off station earlier after a non-combat fire in its laundry spaces damaged berthing areas. The crew was fine.
I'm not gonna lie, every time I heard about laundry room fire damage, I'm like, what you talking about? It's not a damage. It's like this, like a technically damaged type of thing. It's just laundry room fire. That doesn't really do anything for the operations. But then I watched the video from Navy Decoder. It's from Navy Decoder, right? Then I watched the video. Was it other channel? I forgot. Then I watched the video about like what that fire means. That fire was huge, 36 hours, and it burned other things around it, not just the laundry room fire, and all the beds and everything, and who knows what structural damage it probably did. So it wasn't just about laundry room. That's where it started. It was much dangerous than that.
The ship remained mission capable. But after repairs at Suda Bay in Crete and a stop in Split, Croatia, the Ford returned to the Red Sea carrying the wear of a deployment that had already stretched longer than planned. The Abraham Lincoln had been pulled from the Indo-Pacific in January, redirected from the other side of the planet to fill the gap. These were not spare carriers sitting idle in reserve. These were the last strategic assets from two separate oceans, Atlantic and Pacific, both now burning through their operational readiness in a single theater. By the time CVN-77 arrived to complete the third axis, the U.S. had already spent more getting it into position than some countries spend on their entire navy in a year. And the math was only going to get worse from here.
I'm pretty sure Hexeth said that USA used about 25 billion US dollar in past month or so since this started, month or two so, right? 1 month is like ceasefire. So in just a month, US burned $25 billion. That's how much it costed. It makes sense when you think about it, because USA is literally precise striking and destroying things while staying far away, and most of the times even in mainland USA for certain things like space wars and things. If you're pressing buttons from the other side of the planet and doing things, yeah, it's going to cost 25 billion, right? So that doesn't surprise me. A lot of people like 25 billion, like a lot of people are going like that, like on media and like TV. To me, that is not surprising, because this is the level of flex that most countries can't do. So of course it's going to cost that money.
Here's what most people miss about 3 carrier strike groups. The number isn't the point. The geometry is. Think of it this way. You're one security guard protecting a building. 2 entrances on opposite sides. You can see both if you stand in the middle. Manageable. Now imagine 3 attackers coming from 3 directions that don't share a sight line.
This is FBI. We surrounded the building from all sides. Basically, this is US military. Much worse than FBI. This is US military. We surrounded your entire country, multiple countries, half of the North Hemisphere. Screw it. From all 3 sides type of way. Not half of the North Hemisphere, but you get the point, right? It's exaggeration.
You can't cover all 3 positions at once. Not because you're weak, because the geometry doesn't allow it. That's exactly what CVN-77 did to Iran's air defense. Before the third axis, Iran's IADS radar network was tracking 2 primary threat vectors, 2 directions. The scan volume, the total angular coverage the radar processors had to monitor, was concentrated and efficient. Response time was fast. Targeting solutions were clean. When CVW-7, the air wing embarked aboard CVN-77, started operating from the southeast, the entire radar geometry broke. Scan volume had to expand. Processors had to track more simultaneously. Response times slowed. And in the gap between scan cycles, in the milliseconds of delay created by a network running beyond its optimal load, CVW-7 found the blind spots. Here's what those milliseconds actually mean. A modern surface-to-air missile system needs roughly 3 to 5 seconds from initial radar track to a valid fire solution. Add 2 seconds of processing delay from scan overload, and a Super Hornet at Mach 0.9 has already moved 4 nautical miles. That's outside most engagement envelopes. The blind spot isn't a gap.
This is why I like this channel. the way he pictures things makes sense, and you don't really think about it, but yeah, it's flying at a Mach speed, 0.9 Mach speed, and those 2 seconds matter. That will travel like 3-4 miles, like he said. Now that's a huge distance for something like a targeting data, right? So that thing matters. It's like when you hear about certain things, or like this thing is traveling at like a 200 miles per hour. Oh, what does that look like? And then you actually see that, yeah, that's what 200 miles per hour looks like. The numbers sometimes like your brain doesn't process until you really paint the picture.
In radar coverage, it's a gap in time. CVW-7 carries more than 70 strike aircraft. FA-18 Super Hornets from VFA-83, VFA-103, VFA-105, and VFA-131. EA-18G Growlers from VAQ-140 for electronic attack. E-2. D Hawkeyes from VAW-116 as the airborne command and control platform. That's a full strike package. But here's the thing. The number of aircraft matters less than the angle they're coming from. Even 10 aircraft arriving from a direction the radar didn't expect, from a vector it took too long to respond to, can hit harder than 100 aircraft charging straight into a prepared defense. 3 carriers didn't give the US 3 times the firepower. They gave the US a geometry Iran couldn't solve. The noose was closed. Here's something Iran's targeting officer...
Yeah, kinda. In the modern warfare, where everything's reliant on radars and sensors and everything working at light speed, if you have defenses that can tackle 100 things, it really won't matter that much if 100 things come from one side or the all around. Given that you have decent radars and system, which Iran doesn't. But if you have that, at that point, it doesn't matter which direction it comes from, right? Like you can defend it. That's how modern warfare works. But yeah, times like this, it matters. Like whatever, like this aircraft carrier triangle that they created, not to mention a ton of destroyers, a ton of planes, coordinated logistics of US, basically like coordinating what to do, how to do, CENTCOM, doing this coordinated attack things and like defensive things. That's going to overwhelm.
Have to deal with every single day. CVN-77 never stops moving. It doesn't anchor. It doesn't hold position. It shifts across hundreds of miles of open ocean on no fixed schedule, no predictable track. By the time a satellite pass captures its wake, the carrier is already somewhere else. To make that possible, to keep a 100,000-ton warship operational, armed, fueled, and invisible while it's constantly on the move, you don't just need a carrier. You need an entire ecosystem. That's CSG-10. Carrier Strike Group 10, a formation of warships, supply vessels, and aircraft built around one purpose, keeping the floating city at its center alive and untraceable. Start with USNS Arctic, TAOE-8, a fast combat support ship assigned to CSG-10. The Arctic pulls alongside CVN-77 at sea, both ships moving at 12 knots, separated by roughly 150 feet. That's the width of 2 highway lanes in open ocean while transferring thousands of gallons of JP-5 aviation fuel per hour, along with dry cargo, ammunition, and spare parts. This is called UNREP, Replenishment at Sea. It's how CVN-77 never has to find a port. It's how the carrier has no fixed address for an adversary to track. The margin of error on a UNREP evolution is a few feet, at sea, in any weather. The crew practices until the precision becomes muscle memory. Then there's the surface force. USS Mason, DDG...
What? It's rusting away? What is that? Why is it all like too many rust on it? That is rust, right? Or is this something else?
87 serves as the air and missile defense commander for CSG.
Wait a minute, it's probably not rust because it's like all on the surface. So it's something, I guess. Looks like rust though.
G10. Its Aegis combat system layers the threat environment. SM-6 for ballistic missile intercepts at the edge of the atmosphere, SM-2 for mid-tier saturation attacks, CIWS, the close-in weapon system, as the last mechanical line of defense before a threat reaches the flight deck. USS Ross and USS Donald Cook, both Arleigh Burke destroyers, extend the radar bubble further and provide additional VLS cells. The result? CVN-77 becomes a mobile airbase with no fixed position, protected by a multi-layer defensive perimeter, sustained indefinitely by ships that come to it rather than the other way around.
If one thing you know about aircraft carrier is that they're motherships, literally. because they have the power, they have the capabilities, and they have many ships around it, and they can coordinate a lot of things, including Aegis system. So any aircraft carrier group is like a whole thing of its own.
A fortress has an address. This city does not. And that's precisely what makes it so hard to attack and so expensive to sustain. At this point, most people stop worrying. The carrier has Locust, directed energy, unlimited shots. Problem solved. Except that's not how the layered defense actually works, and the part nobody explains is where the math breaks down. Here's the part of this story that doesn't make it into the combat footage. CVN-77 carries something the other ships in the strike group don't. 2 A4W nuclear reactors, generating between 64 and 100 megawatts of electrical power. That's enough to run a small city. And some of that power goes to Locust, the laser optical counter-UAS system. A direct...
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I've been crying about this for the past month or so when they talked about how to fit Helios on like destroyers. I'm like, put it on a carrier. It has a nuclear reactor. Ford has the biggest of them all. Then even 77 has big one, the Bush, right? So the big nuclear reactors, like you can just use lasers. I mean, yeah, there are real engineering limitations about heat and a lot of things. E equals mc squared. Energy and mass is the same thing. So you don't get something without having... you get the point. Like there is always like give and take type of way. So you can't just infinitely use something without having some kind of a damage. But even then, with a good engineering and manageable, like having a mechanic there who constantly does repairs, you can use something like Locust or multiple of them on a carrier. It has an infinite power because of the nuclear reactor.
Directed energy weapon tested aboard a U.S. Navy carrier in 2025. Locust is a point defense system. Thermal blooming, the phenomenon where a laser beam heats the air along its path and bends itself, combined with the salt aerosols endemic to maritime environments, limits the system's effective engagement to close range. It's not a weapon for shooting down threats at the horizon. It's a weapon for the threats that make it through everything else, the leakers. And here's the physics that makes Locust's range ceiling.
Again, you can just scale that up with the power and that wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, again, engineering issues you have to solve.
Permanent. The stronger the beam, the more it heats the air column in its path, which accelerates the blooming, which bends the beam faster, which reduces effective range further. More power makes the problem worse, not better. You cannot engineer your way around thermodynamics. Locust's range limitation isn't a design flaw waiting for the next hardware revision. It's a physical law. And against leakers, it has one critical advantage. Its ammunition is electricity. As long as the A4W reactors are running, Locust doesn't run out. Every leaker it kills is $1 million interceptor missile that stays in its VLS tube. But here's the math that actually matters. Locust handles the inner ring, the final few. Before a threat gets close enough for Locust to engage it, it has to survive the outer layers, the SM-6s, the SM-2s, the layered...
Is that how it works though? Isn't it like you use most optimum weapon, take it down? Or do you play safe and try to take it down from far away as you can? Because if that's the case, isn't that a problem? Like using, what is it like? Is it SM2 or is it SM6, the longest range one that can even shoot down the satellite? Wouldn't you just run out of that left and right? I thought there is more of a judgment call there. Like if something is coming, yeah, I guess this system can take care of it. We don't need to waste the long distance one.
Aegis intercepts fired by Mason, Ross, and Donald Cook. Each of those is a missile. Each missile is a manufacturing lead time of months. Each one that fires represents a fraction of a stockpile that can't be replenished at sea. Roughly half of the combined US THAAD and Patriot interceptor inventory has been expended in this conflict. Tomahawk cruise missiles, approximately 30%. Replenishment timeline, 1 to 4 years, given current production rates. Locust doesn't replace a single SM-6 already fired. The question was never whether Locust is capable. It is. The question is, how long before the outer rings run out of missiles, before Locust ever gets a shot? 3 tactical victories, geometry, survivability, technology, are sharing one budget of firepower that cannot be rebuilt fast enough. Step back. Look at the full picture. The geometry is airtight. 3 axes, no blind spots. Iran's radar network overwhelmed. The logistics are holding. CVN-77 stays in position indefinitely, sustained by ships that come to it. Locust guards the inner ring with ammunition that costs nothing but electricity, while Aegis handles the outer layers. On paper, this is the most complete naval encirclement the US has executed in a generation. By every tactical measure, this is dominance. And that's exactly when the antagonist finally shows its face. Magazine drain speed, the rate at which the United States is consuming interceptors, cruise missiles, and precision munitions, not the rate at which it can replace them. The Abraham Lincoln was pulled from the Indo-Pacific in January. The George H.W. Bush came from the Atlantic. Both strategic reserves, Pacific and Atlantic, are now committed to one theater. There is no third
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Every time I see that, I nearly panicked a bit the first time I saw this. You see this outside tower where everything happens. It's kind of outside of the, like the actual boat. It's in like platform type thing. And as a civil engineer, I'm like, wow, what the hell? And then I realized, wait a minute, this is a metal ship. It's not a building, it's a metal ship. So yeah, it makes sense.
There is no third carrier to call. There is no strategic depth left in the rotation. Meanwhile, Beijing is watching. Moscow is watching. The Taiwan Strait has one fewer carrier strike group in its vicinity than it had a year ago. Eastern Europe's deterrence equation has shifted. Not because the US made those places less important, but because the calculus of 3 carriers in the Middle East made them temporarily uncoverable. This is the reversal that the geometry alone cannot see. The noose around Iran is geometrically perfect, but the same geography that closes around Tehran opens a gap somewhere else. The US Navy cannot be everywhere at once. It never could. The question was always, which vacuum does the...
You sure about that? Because I'm not sure about that, I'm not gonna lie. Like, let's just say if thing kicks off tomorrow, somehow World War starts, there's only one Navy that can actually do that. And I think that's the US one. Now, yes, in the way you're working now, you probably won't be able to do that. Right now, you're working in certain type of efficiency where like you need certain type of boats, you need certain numbers of boat. In that way, yeah, you probably won't do it. But if you stretch it thin, if you change your doctrine, maybe you can call that, I don't know, strategy, and then you use like just like needed amount of ships and needed amount of things, even if it's stretching it thin, yeah, you can probably spread out to the whole world. You can like stretch out and take 5-6 aircraft carrier out if you really needed to, right? And spread them around. Air Force is already, again, I've said this many times, US Air Force is one of the most scariest thing there is. Space Force used to be Space Command, it kind of still is. Area 51 and all this shit you hear about is also Air Force. Air Force is really scary. So Air Force is already spread around the planet. Like everywhere you look, there's probably a base with the Air Force on it. So they are already like dominating that way. And Navy can dominate as well. What is left then? Right? Army is like last skill thing. Okay, where we're going, where we're invading. Let's put the army there type of way. So like there's only one country that can power project like that.
The opponent choose to fill, while the carrier is busy winning. Perfect local victory is the mechanism of global depletion. 3 carriers in one theater is not a sign of overwhelming strength. It is a sign of how completely that theater has consumed the available strength. 3 carriers, 1 noose, 0 strategic reserve behind it. The question isn't whether the US Navy can win this fight. It can. The geometry is sound, the logistics are holding, the technology is working. The question is, while it wins here, who is watching the other oceans? Every SM-6 fired in the Arabian Sea is a missile that isn't patrolling the approaches to Taiwan. Every day the Abraham Lincoln spends in CENTCOM is a day it's not in the Indo-Pacific, where it was assigned before January. Every week the Bush is on the 3rd axis is a week the Atlantic has no...
Okay, Lucas is calf there, man. Does everyone's body just like, I mean, it's Navy. But then again, like what everybody looks like bodybuilder or something. What is this? Look at that. Like you can, even from this far away, you can see that. You can see like particular muscles.
3rd axis is a week the Atlantic has no carrier strike group at ready. The opponents who matter most in the long run are not the ones shooting the drones. They're the ones watching the stockpile numbers. If this is the kind of analysis you don't get anywhere else, the physics behind the strategy, the math behind the headlines, subscribe to Navy Decoded. We don't cover the war, we teach you how to read it. Now, here's your engineering problem. Locust kills leakers with a laser, but thermal blooming bends the beam, salt aerosols scatter it, and the system tracks one arc at a time. If you were designing the next attack drone, how would you beat it? Best answer gets pinned. The physics is all in the video. The solution is on you.
Okay, is he really like... Does the beam bend at a noticeable amount? Because I don't know about that, man. High energy beam doesn't bend like that. I mean, not enough to be a noticeable bend. If it does, which means it has like dissipated most of his energy. At that point, like that beam doesn't do much. So it basically is an engineering thing, like how much power you put through. And yeah, look, man, here's what I'm saying. Like just the way science work, right? If you're seeing a laser beam, which means it's hitting all the particles in the air. That is how it's deflecting light that is hitting your eye. That's how you see it. Best laser beam is the one you can't see because it's not wasting its energy. I don't know how that works really in an atmosphere. Maybe low energy beam, you probably can't see it. Like, I'm pretty sure you can't see Helios. If Helios works, you won't be able to see the energy beam. It will just like destroy a drone and you say, oh, look at the drone's falling. Because it's just low power enough that you won't see the beam because it's supposed to fry out the systems, not really like cut it through like it's Star Wars or something. Powerful beam, yeah, you would be able to see it. I'm pretty sure you would compensate for the atmospheric thing with the more power, right? I don't know about bending though. Like again, if it can bend, you would like, compensate for that as well, just the way you do with the ballistic things. So yeah, this like laser and things is just going to amplify. Because the biggest thing in military is wasting of the money because things cost money. High-end missiles gone like that as soon as they explode. That's not the case with laser. Even in Fallout, have any of you played the video game Fallout New Vegas? You find, like infinitely charged, like laser weapons. You're like, what is this? There's a feeling you get like, I don't have to worry about ammo now. Obviously, it's not powerful as certain ballistic because of game balancing. But even in the game, you're like, yeah, laser is awesome. This is just basically that. Well, there you go. Why 3 US Navy carriers winning against Iran is a warning sign that US has too much power. That's the warning sign? I don't know. This is why Navy Decoded. If you like my next one, subscribe and I'll see you next time.